Welcome to ET with GOTB. They did it, they did it, they finally did it. Who did it? Let's find out. I'm Rachel.
I'm Sophie.
And this is Extra Time with Girls on the Ball. Welcome back to your weekly episode. Apologies that it's slightly later than normal, but I'm very excited to get into this one. Before we do, this is your weekly reminder to make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen or if you're watching your podcasts. If you'd like to give us a review, leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. All of that helps. And make sure you're following us as well across all of our social media platforms. We're at Girls on the Ball on everything. Sophie, they did it. Arsenal won the Champions League. Are you feeling a little bit smug?
I am feeling a little bit smug. Not that I'm rubbing it in at all. I haven't really rubbed it in, actually. I think I've been okay about it. I do keep saying, I was so calm, like so unbelievably calm. I was surprising myself how calm I was before the game. I always get nervous, whoever it is. And I was so calm before the game. And then Stina scored and I suddenly wasn't calm anymore. And I was trying to be calm as well, and growing up for Susie, who was sat next to me in the press box, who was losing her shit, essentially, completely losing her shit throughout the game. And, trying to every so often put a comforting arm on her and keep her together. And then I did the silly thing. I don't know why I did it. I turned on my stopwatch.
So did I.
At 90 minutes when the board went up to show 7 minutes. And I don't know why I did it, because I never normally do it. I just go with the flow. And it made that 7 minutes last about 20 years. I think it was just so slow. Every time I looked over it, it was only like 20 seconds gone. I was like, my God, this is painful. I'm feeling, I think the whole story, I think I've just written about it in something that will go out today. And it was kind of that fairy tale. It reminded me a little bit of the journey, Champions League journey. Very different, I know, but do you remember when Chelsea men first won the Champions League? And they came from behind in like 3 different games, beat Barcelona with 10 players, and it just felt like changed managers halfway through as well. And it just felt like that kind of story where at some point you kind of got that destiny of I don't believe in fate, but there was just something about it that said Arsenal was going to win it to me, and
Don't believe in
they
fate.
did it.
That's
I don't believe, but I believe there are narratives that lead to kind of results. And I think when you think about the comebacks against Real Madrid, that the last minute goals against Bayern Munich and Juventus, and then, the game against Lyon, I think all of that narrative plays into the fact that that's why I was feeling pretty confident ahead of the final.
I wasn't. I knew they could do it. I just didn't know if they would do it. And I just didn't trust that they would turn up when they needed to, which I know sounds bad, but I think when we'd seen in the past, and it was the same with Chelsea's run to the final, where they were always better in the second leg, and I just got worried about the fact that the final was only going to be one leg. Would they be willing to step away from the Arsenal style? And they were. And, let's get into it. Arsenal won, Barcelona 0. How did they do it? Even starting with the lineup, we discussed, will they go a little bit more defensive? Will they maybe sacrifice Monum's creativity to go a little bit more defensive in midfield to try and combat the fact that, that is one of Barcelona's biggest strengths, of which they have many. They didn't do that, but they still actually managed to stifle that midfield very well.
They did. I think it was Kim Little and Caitlin Ford who spoke after the game, who said that their big focus had been on kind of making that midfield area really tight and trying to stop kind of the movement of Barcelona, who love to, do all of those slick movements and rotations inside the midfield area, and to kind of force them wide onto one side or the other. And they did that really effectively. When I saw the lineup, I actually was like, I maybe would have gone Leah Volti and done that kind of double pivot with Kim Little and pushed Mariona into the 10. But I think Renee Slegers, she got it spot on. I think they sacrificed their style in a way, but they didn't park the bus by any means. They just became really, really compact, and they used their wide players to add to the compactness and to track back. And Caitlin Ford, one of the players who had the games of their career, that, block on Fridolina Rolfo in the first half kind of set the tone for everything that was to come. She tracked back when she shouldn't have even got there, I think, and got the ball, and she celebrated it like she scored a goal. And I think that just kind of defined what Arsenal were about on the day, all across the pitch. They were just immense, and they've pressed at the front 3. It sets the tone as well. The way that they were not giving Barcelona's, especially in the first half, Barcelona's defence much room to work with on the ball. They were having to go a bit wider or a bit longer than they would otherwise want to do, and it kind of allowed Arsenal then when they hit them on that transition, they had a few chances in that first half, didn't they?
And actually, it was Monum who was the one who kind of led in a number of those key opportunities. Obviously, there was the own goal that turned out she was offside. There was stinging Catacole's gloves. She kind of made that fingertip save, and it was Monum who was kind of at the heart of some of those chances
then you
as
had
well.
Chloe Kelly, who put a volley over when normally you'd probably see her at least hit the
Caitlin Ford
target.
sending it to the back
Kim
post.
Little open in the box and just drives it over the bar. And at that point, I don't know. Normally, you would go, will they rue these missed chances? Yeah. And I just wasn't thinking that.
I think when we got to the second half and we got to 20 minutes of just Barcelona throwing everything in the kitchen sink at Arsenal, I started to think, will they rue those chances that they created? And of course, I think, we will get on to the substitutes and then that kind of mindset I shifted a little bit. But I think we kind of underestimate how difficult it is to be comfortable being uncomfortable, to be comfortable out of position as a team who are normally ones who want to have more possession, and to be so switched on in every moment against a team like Barcelona. And like when we say they were almost perfect, yes, there were bodies on the line, yes, there were last-ditch tackles, but that is part and parcel of everyone knowing their role and knowing their job. And when one maybe misses out, the other one is there. And that's part of the game plan. And while it might not always be pretty, it's part of the game plan.
It reminded me so much of England-Spain at the start of the year and the way that England tackled Spain in that game. The way that they packed the field, the way that they forced Spain wide. Arsenal kind of did exactly the same kind of concept, forcing them to, yes, there were opportunities, but a lot of them were generally from outside of the box.
Or crosses.
And for the most part, you're not generally too worried about those ones, or forcing them wide so they're having to cross into the box. They had so many corners, and I think it was Caitlin Ford who said after the game, I wasn't worried about a single corner. We were dominant in that area. They have Alessia Russo filling in as well, who adds that height at the back. Chloe Kelly is pretty good as well defensively. You have, Steph Catley, Leah Williamson, all of them good in the air and with their heads. So they were able to really get the better of them in those areas and come out on top. And I think that was absolutely key.
Even the way Katie McCabe, Marshall, Caroline Graham-Hansen, I was impressed with. She was so clean in her tackles. And she was strong in her tackles, but clean in her tackles, and really made it difficult for Graham-Hansen to perhaps impact the game the way that we're used to seeing her impact the game. And when I was seeing McCabe do that, it kind of made me realise how good broadly the back line were doing in terms of their roles. There wasn't a single card, or was there any fouls?
There were the back line didn't commit a single foul, was it? Which is, when you're thinking about
it's incredible
who you're playing and the players you're playing against, for them not to commit a single foul all game is pretty ridiculous. I was going to say that also the Katie McCabe, Caroline Graham-Hansen, the moment I was like, oh, they're pretty much on this, other than Caitlin Ford's block, was when Graham-Hansen went down. She trod on the ball, tripped up on the ball, went down and asked for a foul, and she was rattled. And you could tell she was rattled in that moment. And it was a bit like, again, harking back to that England-Spain game, when Lucy Bronze put the pressure on Aitana Bonmati in the corner and won a corner.
Yeah.
And the whole crowd lifted and the whole energy in England's team lifted. And I think there were a series of those pivotal moments that really changed the game in Arsenal's favour and really, got in Barcelona's faces, rattled them. They're not used to that. They're not used to not having things their own way, and I think that really surprised them a little bit.
Yeah, I was very impressed then with the substitutes, the impact of the substitutes at 68 minutes or so. Beth Mead, Stina Blackstenius. We've spoken a lot before about the direct running of Stina, and it was something we talked about beforehand about what Arsenal might need to do a bit more. They relied on the long balls more, particularly after Stina came on. And we've seen in the past that Irina Paredes can struggle a little bit against those types of direct running. Same with Mappy Leon at times. And we saw when Chelsea beat them in Spain last year. I remember you being really calm about that game as well, when Ramirez was kind of running so direct at them. So that was something I thought Arsenal did very well.
I think, Paul Paredes, she's had horrible game, to be honest. You know, she almost scored that own goal that got disallowed for the Chloe Kelly being offside in the build-up, counting her lucky stars for that one. And then she gets drawn into a kind of unnecessary yellow card. It was a foul, but it wasn't. It was in the area of the pitch that she didn't really need to do it. You could tell that she was getting a little bit uncomfortable with the situation. And I think that was around 60 minutes or so. And Renee Slegger said it in her post-match as well. You know, they spotted that moment as a time to kind of strike and bring the ace cards on, and to go with, you know, that Barcelona's defence were towering as well, despite them having a lot of the ball. And to send someone on like Blackstenius who can just run at them, and she had 2 runs at them before the goal, I think. Came very, very close to scoring in both runs, and you could just see instantly that Paredes was a bit like, oh no, I'm in trouble here, when she got her past her twice in a row, and then it just came to that, you know, that goal eventually.
And that goal was from an Arsenal corner. Some wonderful work from Caldente to spot the run of Mead, who kind of almost used the referee to shield her position a little bit. A brilliant reverse pass from her to pick out Blackstenius, and then for Blackstenius to stay onside, because it was a tight line. She held her run, got onside in space as well, and picked her spot in the goal and put it past Catacol in goal. It was a really nice passage of play, and yeah, place erupted. But then you're thinking, okay, it's 17 long minutes that they have to hold on, because again, Barcelona go to throw everything at them, and they did. And actually, I thought Arsenal were very good at the game management side of it, you know, in terms of getting the ball out, running the ball up, taking their time with everything, you know, understandable gameplay that frustrated Barcelona and their fans. But yeah, it was 7 long minutes, and like you, I put my stopwatch on, and the photographer next to me, I don't think she kind of had any skin in the game. I think she was Portuguese, but even she kept wanting to see the clock, you know, and she was almost kind of wanting to see some of the upset. Do you know what I mean?
I think often for people covering the game, we get told that we can't. There's kind of this opinion that we can't show our emotion, or, you know, get involved in the dramatics of the game. We're there to do a job, and yes, we are to some extent, but we don't do this job without an inherent love of the sport. You don't do this job and you don't put in the work to get it right and to get the knowledge and all of that stuff if you don't love the sport. So thanks to the person on Instagram who messaged me the other day and said, always show your emotion, always let your emotion show, because, you know, that shows
it matters.
That it matters, and the passion for this game is still there. And I think that's really important for everyone to remember. You know, we've covered this. Our first Champions League game was Arsenal-Barcelona in 2012. We went to the home leg.
2012.
2012.
So far in the future.
2012. Just after the Olympics, Jen Beattie scored a hat-trick that day. And then we went away with probably about, 5 to 10 people who were travelling from England. And, you know, when you look at where it's come from then to now and how things have changed, and I think it's all right to be a bit emotional about that.
Absolutely. And you then went along to the trophy lift at the Emirates the next day, the Monday. Well done, Arsenal, for organising that so quickly. Not something we've seen in the women's game as a solo thing. And I think the Emirates is so well built for something like that, to be able to pull something like that together.
The Armoury is the iconic place for those kind of things. I think Susie was saying, you know, you had the FA Cup celebrations there and stuff like that for the men. So I think it's was iconic. It was really well done. They had such a tight window to get people there as well, because obviously it's international break now. So yeah, they had to turn it around pretty quick. But I think the fact that it had, people were like, will people turn up? You know, who knows? Boy, did they turn up. There was just red and white everywhere. And I was standing I didn't introduce myself yet, but I think I was standing next to like the head honcho at the comms in the Arsenal FC full stop, and literally me just bawling my eyes out because when they lifted the trophy, because it's just come so far.
It has. And I think people forget that like we'd have been in the same situation if it had been Chelsea or Manchester City who had lifted the title and an English team had won it for the first time since 2007.
I would still be there bawling my eyes out. Like, honestly, these moments, I've been lucky enough to have 2 of them, and we've been lucky enough to have 2 of them. You know, winning trophies doesn't come around that often, and I know we're not like affiliated to a particular team, but we've managed to see 2 moments in history where, history's been made, first of all, but also we've really been able to identify how far the game has come.
Yeah, there are those kind of moments where you stop and look back, as opposed to always looking forward, which you so often are, thinking about where the game can go next.
And also, like, just on a selfish note, like, it's worth all the kind of blood, sweat and tears. Like, this game is brilliant, but it's not easy to cover by any means. So
Yeah.
I think
all those frustrating
give ourselves a pat on the back too.
Those frustrating evenings where we've come back in a grump because things haven't gone our way, or it's been difficult, or we've had to work really hard to get something.
Or you've had to be out in the freezing cold for 2 hours.
Wait 2 hours in a mix zone just to get 30 seconds with a single player, or whatever it might be.
There are frustrations, so I think these moments we can.
When you have a terrible trophy lift shooting wise, and you just feel like going home and not bothering, and then something like that happens, and you get to shoot those kind of special moments. Go
and check out all of Rachel's photos as well, because they're brilliant.
Thank you. But another chapter for the book, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move very quickly to the Lionesses. Of course, it is international break now because it never stops. And the big news coming out of the Lionesses camp, of course, is that Mary Earps has retired with immediate effect from international duty. Now, this was a huge surprise, a huge shock for all of us. I don't think anyone was expecting it. And I do want to say there has been lots of speculation out there. There's been some really terrible takes out there. There's some people, as ever, wading into the sport that they very, very, very rarely cover to give their opinion and to borderline character assassinate a player who doesn't deserve that. Whatever's gone on, we don't know what's gone on, and that's a reminder that we don't have all the information. We may not always ever have all the information. So, speculating on what's gone down and whose fault it is and all this kind of business doesn't actually help anyone. And it doesn't take away from the legacy that Mary Earps has left in the gloves. She's changed goalkeeping in this country. I think she's probably changed goalkeeping worldwide, I would argue.
I think
one of the most well-known.
Remember after winning, England won the Euros, and maybe that autumn we went to King Power to watch England-Belgium. And I remember when it wasn't before the game even started, they were all warming up, and the chant for Mary Earps just reverberated around the ground. And I was sitting there going, have I ever heard something like this for a goalkeeper? I know there are chants for goalkeepers, but where they are single-handedly just picking out the goalkeeper to chant. And I think that kind of shows the impact that Mary Earps has had. She won BBC Sports Personality of the Year. Not many goalkeepers have done that in their lifetime. It's a huge achievement. She has taken herself from not being picked to working hard and getting back into the England squad and becoming, for a few years, the best goalkeeper in the world. And that is so hard to do and such an admirable feat. I think that it's worth celebrating that. And I know the timing is going to cause questions and it's going to cause problems for both her and for England. But at the same time, as you said, it doesn't take away from everything that she's achieved and will go on to achieve, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I probably won't miss the screaming at the high pitched for Mary Earps. Like
Mary!
The minute the players come out and warming up until the very, very, very end of the match. But I'm sure that those fans will find another person to scream at. So I probably that won't stop for
me.
That's
why you bought your loop here.
That's why I bought. Right? I got given those loop headphones. So they've been a lifesaver for those moments. But you're right. That is the name that everyone screams. And she's definitely changed the landscape for goalkeepers. So she'll be a big miss, a big loss. And more from the team perspective, I think it's a concern in terms of who's number two.
Yeah, because, Chiara Keating has been brilliant at times for Manchester City in her young career so far, but she's still incredibly young. She is prone to a few errors, but she also doesn't have a cap yet. Anna Morehouse, best goalkeeper in the NWSL, I think, last year, pretty much, won the title with Orlando Pride. But again, and has experience, but again, has never been tried and tested on the international stage. And then you've got Ellie Roebuck, potentially, who does have caps, has experience being at major tournaments, but has barely played for Barcelona in the last season. So, and, had the stroke and everything, that she's had to recover from with that. So it has been left in a bit of a tricky situation.
I do find it interesting how some people are like, this is Serena's fault. You should have given Chiara Keating a chance. And you're like, okay, nobody expected that you were going to suddenly need your third keeper with 5 weeks to go to the Euros.
You plan for situations, but you don't plan. I mean, the plan going into this cycle in the lead up to the Euros will have been to have Hannah Hampton and Mary Earps as number 1 and number 2, or interchanging or whatever it might be. So I don't know of another England team that have given, or another team full stop, who have given a third keeper multiple minutes because they think
maybe number 2 will retire.
It's just, it's just something you don't really plan for, I think.
Yeah. All I can think about is the Euros in 2022 when Sarah Van Veenendaal got injured in the first game and Daphne van Domselaar had to come in and play the rest of the tournament. That's all I could think of.
And now she's won the Champions League with Arsenal.
Yes, but it was all I could think of yesterday when the news broke, and I was like, who's going to do that? Who's going to be the one to do that if that happens?
But then I also do think, there are moments where goalkeepers have stepped up. And do you remember KB? Karen Barnsley at the World Cup in Canada in 2015 against Canada at BC Place in Vancouver, and KB got a bit of the hot turf, the rubber from the turf, because it was fake pitches in her eye, and she couldn't see. So Siobhan Chamberlain had to come on in the middle of a quarterfinal to see it out. That's pressure. And while Siobhan was very experienced, she hadn't had all that many minutes with England. And then thinking back to 2019 World Cup, Carly Telford making her debut, was it against Argentina, I think?
Potentially. For
the team. So, or making a World Cup debut, sorry. So there have been instances where keepers have stepped up and done a job. And maybe it lights a bit of a fire under them because people are saying they can't do it, to kind of spur them on to be able to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think people are saying they can't do it.
No.
They're just saying it would have been more ideal if they
But it's a bit like saying Arsenal were the underdogs. I do think that lit a fire under them to prove themselves.
It did, but it was also still true.
No.
Okay, another player not in the squad is Millie Bright, who is very understandably taking a step back. She's spoken out about it on her own podcast as well, which is really good to see players kind of speaking about the loading and the mental pressure and everything else that goes alongside being a professional footballer. So she is taking a step back, which is good. Hopefully she can recover and feel back to her best in time for the tournament. She's obviously a key player.
So important for players to stay in tune with themselves and in tune with their bodies and their minds. And there's so much pressure for them to perform all the time and to turn up all the time. As she said, the fact that she's had such a long season with Chelsea, she's played pretty much every game almost. She's been integral to their efforts in all 4 fronts until latter stages. And she did look, you could tell, I think it was that 4-game streak against Manchester City, and she started to maybe peter off a little bit from her very high bar. So I'm not saying she was bad, but she just wasn't at the high level that she'd already reached. And you could tell that she was a bit tired. And it's probably, hopefully, the best thing for her that she takes an extra couple of weeks to really recover, and then she can come back into England squad, hopefully for the Euros, and be back to her best and fresh.
Also, breaking news that Ella Morris has unfortunately done her ACL, which absolutely gutted for her. She's had such a good season. She's spoken a lot about getting stronger, getting fitter, getting more physically strong in the game, and because she's had to overcome injuries before, of course. And I'm just gutted.
Do it on your first day of camp as well.
For me, she is the next Lucy Bronze if she ever retires, Lucy Bronze, because she's like bionic at this stage. But I do see the kind of that future for her. So wishing her all the best in her recovery. Portugal, Spain next, of course, which would be interesting with a couple of those players missing, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm going to be really intrigued about how England approach these games, because I think I'm famous for not giving 2 hoots about the Nations League. And I think in this camp in particular, it's going to be key to see whether they really give 2 hoots about it too. And not to say that they don't want to win every game, they do, but whether they go about it with as much gusto as they need to with a major tournament ahead is going to be interesting. Whether she rotates a bit on Friday because, Arsenal players, had a massive final on Saturday and then were partying for 72 hours afterwards, and all of that, and they deserve their celebrations as well. Or even Manchester United, last week with the Sevens, and yes, they didn't have that much loading. They had a great time out there. But at the same time, do you rest more of those players than you would do otherwise? So I think that's going to be super. And then you've got the trio of Hemp, Greenwood and Stanway, who have not played an awful lot of football. How do you get them back into, getting up to full speed? So it's going to be interesting to see how she approaches that. I imagine Spain will be full throttle England 11 to the best that she can put on the pitch with people injured or missing.
Absolutely. For me, I will be going back to Ireland next week for Ireland against Slovenia in Cork. They're playing Turkey on Friday, I believe. So both must-win games, ideally with a couple of goals. Louise Quinn has been called up, so she might get a few minutes to get her send-off after retiring, which is really nice to see as well. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing the game in Cork. It went so well for them last time when they played France and beat France, so fingers crossed for the same.
Lucky place.
Let's hope so. Quick word on the World Sevens. Wild experience. We did the final day. I didn't know what I was shooting. I was getting all sorts of mad stuff that I don't normally expect to get at football. But I think
you actually look at them properly.
Yeah, I really struggle with the actual football bits of it because it is so quick and there's a lot of players involved. And because it's a smaller pitch, everybody can get back and everybody can get forward. So it's a very congested area and it moves very quickly. And I feel like I struggled with that. I got a lot of the fun stuff. Struggled again with the trophy lift because I think some people don't think about the trophy lift for the people who are providing the coverage of the trophy lift.
Or watching the trophy lift. It was very, very long.
Nobody really saw... Well, oh, fuck God. It went on for ages and it was freezing. But they kept doing this of white smoky stuff, which wasn't that cool, first of all, but also
never get the white smoke. Aston Villa do it too when they come out. They just put white smoke in the air, and I'm like, if you're trying to create an effect, that's not a cool effect.
Yeah, it's not that cool. So
put the flames up.
There was that, and then there was all the confetti. So for the first kind of 15 seconds of the trophy lift, everyone was like, I'll just wait until everything's gone down so I can actually shoot it. Yeah. So that was a bit, all the lights went down, which is great for broadcasting cameras. But yeah, good luck with those photos. God love you. At least I got good stuff for the Champions League final. But what was really nice to see, despite everyone's concerns that are still legitimate concerns about more football and loading before Euros, it was really nice to see players having fun and really getting into it and enjoying it and having the crack and doing the fun walkouts and doing the crazy celebrations. That was really nice to see, and it was nice to see players enjoy it so much. So I'm sure they're all desperate to go back next year.
It was great fun. I had a ball in the press box. It was a blast. The music was good. The walk-ons were good. Everyone was just, it was kind of what football should be like. And I know it's very serious most of the time.
Don't tell Nicky to set.
No, I don't mean that in that way. I mean, we still want the 11 side, the serious stuff, don't get me wrong, but it gave the players a chance to really express themselves.
It did. So, very quickly, any other business? We do, of course, owe you a WSL roundup, which we still haven't got around to. It's going to be a two-parter, but it's just been a bit delayed because football just kept going. So we had other stuff to talk about, and I didn't kind of want to try and wedge in other stuff into our kind of two-part roundup. So
yeah, and then we had the extra 3-pod as well. And stuff like that. So that will be coming in June. And then, of course, we will start our build-up to the Euros, which will be very exciting. Otherwise, that is it from us. We'll be back again. A pod early next week. We'll do something at the weekend as well, as we always do. Do love when you join. Otherwise, we'll be back to you again very soon.